So let's kick things off. What was the first time that you did something entrepreneurial?
So first got started entrepreneurship back when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was taking a web design course and was building a website. And built a website, put it out there as part of a class curriculum activity, and wanted to know what I could do more with it. And my teacher at the time, Mr. O, was still a legend today, told me, go build an iPhone app. It was like the new thing that came out. And that summer when everyone went to sports camp, sleepover camp, all that random stuff, I had my parents buy me a textbook, and I went in my basement and programmed an iPhone app over the course of the summer that was called iExcuses. I've never been the best student, never will be the best student. And I built an app that allowed me to generate excuses to get out of homework situations. And at the time, it was when the iPhone first came out. Yeah. And people actually paid for apps. So it was an app that I did 99 cents for. And today, no one would ever pay for an excuse app. And back then, I sold $400 worth in sophomore in high school, and I thought I was a millionaire. And it was just a really cool experience. Not only that I built something, but people were using it, and I made money in high school.
Yeah. Did you know at that moment that that was going to be your way forward, or were you just still trying a bunch of things and trying to be a kid?
It was, the coolest thing about it was I was creating something that someone was using and someone was appreciated to me, and that's where I think I kind of fell in love with the thing of entrepreneurship and creating and building something that someone would use at some point in time. Okay. And that's why I wanted to be an engineer initially as well, was because I coded that, I built it myself, and it was rewarding. Yeah. And the easiest way to do something was build it yourself as opposed to pay someone to do it. Yeah. So I learned how to do that. I'm not a good engineer by any means, but I know the basics.
If I were to ask you right after you coded that app, what would be like your college plan? What would you tell me?
Computer science.
Computer science?
Yeah, it's because I knew I wanted to continue doing something similar to that. And that was the best way to do it, was learn from people that have done it before in the engineering space to develop a base skill set to where I can write spaghetti code to make something that actually worked.
I like it. Where are you from?
Alpharetta, Georgia.
Alpharetta, Georgia. What brings you to Charleston, South Carolina?
The beach and tennis. So when I moved here originally, I would play tennis on the College of Charleston tennis team. And it was a good enough computer science school where I felt like I was surrounded by like-minded people that weren't 100% engineers. Yep. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I got accepted to Georgia Tech, a bunch of nerdy engineering schools that were all engineers. And I never wanted to go to school to be a computer science guy, to go get a PhD. I wanted to go to school to learn how to code, to build something cool. And the College of Charleston was that nice mix of everything.
All right, so how did you spend that first summer after freshman year?
So I applied for a few jobs, got denied at all of them as a software engineering intern. And that summer I basically was like, I'm going to build something myself. So I was teaching tennis back home and coding at nights and weekends, and built a couple iPhone or Android apps actually that did pretty well. Snapchat just came out my freshman year of college, and one of the unique things with Snapchat was you couldn't take a selfie in the dark and send it to people. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. So that was my idea. I was like, if I want to do that, don't ask why. I wanted to be able to do that, and no app existed, and I was like, I'm going to build my own solution. So I basically, after teaching tennis in the day, I would go home and code and build this Android app that allowed you to take a selfie in the dark and send it via Snapchat. Called it Front Flash. Turned out I wasn't the only one that wanted to do something similar to that. App blew up on the Android App Store, was featured in Mashable and a few other media publications. And I hit 1 million users with it within 3 months of launch, which was pretty cool. And that's where it was a real entrepreneurial thing, to where I was building something that not my high school friends were using, but millions of people were using it, and it was an actual need, and that's where it really kicked in. So that summer I built Front Flash, a few other apps. One hit 1 million users as well. It's called Facebook Photo Downloader, basic utility that allowed you to save your Facebook photos to your cell phone before Facebook allowed you to do that. It's kind of a similar thing, a feature people wanted but didn't exist. I wanted it too, so I built it, and it did a little PR campaign, and it worked.
Were those two in the same summer?
Yes.
Will you say the names of the companies that turned you down for those internships? Give me one.
Spark.
Yes. Yes. That is the ultimate.
I'll give the others a round too. Blackbaud and Benefit Focus.
There we go. I think that worked out in your favor.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love getting to that.
That is awesome. So talk about that initial go-to-market strategy for those two apps. So you said you did a little PR, you did a little app store optimization, but like after you build the app, what do you really do to get 2 million users at that point in time?
Sure. So a lot of it was on the app store optimization. Did a lot of research online. It was the first time I ever went launching an app. Looked at forums, looked at what other people had done, and pulled ideas. Thought what would work personally myself. Tested and tried a few, and then did a PR campaign. I've always thought I've been better at marketing and talking to people than writing code. My fellow coworkers can probably agree. And so I crafted a kind of a PR story. Basically, the young kid builds an app and launches it, which at that time, people weren't, high schools and college students weren't building apps and launching it. It was people that have experience writing code on the Android and iPhone store. So I was like, what's my advantage over everyone else? I'm a college kid, so let me use it to my favor. So that's what I did from a PR perspective is called to Charleston student launches app that 1 million people use. When people wrote about it, because it was a story. That's what media is telling a story that people want to read. And that's the marketing side there.
Yeah, how did you learn that? It sounds so simple, but so powerful. The idea of building a narrative to create that compelling story to get people to talk about you. Is that something that you deliberately set out to learn or stumbled upon? Like, what was your process to get there?
I Googled a lot on the marketing and the App Store optimization front because basically I think I Googled, I don't know, so long ago, how do I get 1 million users or something to that nature. Read a bunch of internet forums, read people that, anonymous people on the internet that had credibility or didn't have credibility, but I read their opinions and understood or thought personally if that was going to work or not, and adapted and adjusted based off those. And from the creative storytelling, I have no clue. It was just, I guess I took a guess and it worked.
Yeah. So back to the two apps, how did those end? Did you sell them for big bucks and move to Sullivan's and call it a life or not? Because we know the end of the story for now. What happened?
So with Front Flash, which was really the big one that really took off initially is coming back freshman year of college, it had some press behind it. Went to a few people was like, hey, you should patent this idea. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Went to a lawyer. A lawyer's like, yeah, it costs 10 grand to patent this. Me as a freshman in college, 10 grand's way more money than I can afford. And I'm like, no, forget that. So Front Flash basically just ran on the App Store, made ad revenue until I got a cease and desist from Snapchat. Then they shut that down, and then they added the feature a month later, which kind of sucked. But it's a young kid getting swallowed by the beast. It's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Facebook photo downloader, someone offered to buy it for a decent amount of money at one point. Turned it down because it was going to make that amount of money in ad revenue within a month. And similar story happened. Facebook launched that feature, and then I got a cease and desist from them as well. But young kid getting hit by the beast. Sometimes money wins.
Yeah, money usually does. So what happened in college after that? So you applied for some corporate jobs locally. You didn't get those. You launched these two apps. You had a little bit of success. Where was your head at that point in terms of career and what you wanted to do? I
was just going to keep on building things until I built something that could stick and sustain me personally forever. At that point, I had fallen in love with creating and building something that people use, and that's what I was going to do forever. Yeah. So what's the next opportunity that came your way? So next thing that came away, a little app called Yik Yak. So I grew up playing tennis, played at college at Charleston. One of my buddies that I grew up training with since I was probably 12 years old was similar to me. He was a nerd that played sports. It's rare today. And he was like, hey, I got this idea for an app. It wasn't Yik Yak, it was another app at the time. It was called Daiko, which was basically a group polling system. He's like, hey, you want to help me with this? I said, sure. Helped him, never did anything. And he's like, hey, I got another idea. It's this app called Yik Yak. I want to build an anonymous social media application. Do you want to help me with it? I was like, sure. It's like, I do the iPhone, you do the Android, we build the backend together. All right, cool. Went heads down and for 2 weeks, and we launched on the App Store. And we launched at College of Charleston, Furman, Wofford, and took off kind of organically from there. Yeah, take us to that first launch. So what was that go-to-market strategy for getting Yik Yak out in the world? Sure, so we played our connections, we played our strengths. So our strengths at the time were we were both athletes, or I wasn't anymore, but he still was an athlete at the time at Furman. So we had a tight community group of athletes at Furman, College of Charleston, through those relationships and tight-knit communities. And this was an application that was powerful if you had a community driven behind it. So we were able to attack the athlete community originally at Furman, College of Charleston, Wofford was kind of just inherited because it was a 10-minute drive from Furman, and built a core group and a critical mass before it could expand across the campuses. So we hit those guys first, and it went from there.
Yeah, I'm sure almost everyone in the room knows what the app is, but I got my mom in the audience, so I know at least one person that doesn't. So you want to just describe what Yik Yak initially set out to do?
Well, you say that if you have a kid, you hate Yik Yak because Yik Yak was a nemesis on high schools. But it was essentially an anonymous social network that allowed you to say whatever you wanted to whoever you wanted within a 1.5 mile radius. It was built on college campuses to give everyone an equal voice on the premise that there's more than one funny person on college campuses. At the time, all college campuses were ran by like a few Twitter accounts, like say College of Charleston Crushes, College of Charleston Memes, or something of that nature that was ran by a couple frats. And the thought process was there's a kid in the back of the room that puts his hoodie on all day that's funnier than everyone. How do we give that guy the same opportunity to speak to the campus as those Twitter accounts? You make the playing field even, and you do that by anonymizing it. So that was the core concept of it.
And then what was that early marketing message that you used to get people to download this thing?
I'm being recorded. I shouldn't say this. Say whatever the fuck you want to whoever the fuck you want.
Is that not the perfect message for college campuses? Genius.
Yeah.
That's what made me question my go-to-market strategy. I need a better one-liner. Cool. So you start to see traction at these early campuses. Your go-to-market strategies are going campus to campus. Was there any early sign or story where you hit that inflection point and you felt like this was different from something you'd done in the past?
Yeah. So this was an app that was used by a lot of people that I knew personally, and it was being used in the Southeast, and people were appreciating it. The moment that strikes me the most, and forever to this day, is I'm sitting in Italian class and my phone rings once, it rings twice, it rings 3 times. It's the same phone number each time, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer this. The 4th time it rings, and I'm like, it's the same number. This has got to be important. And I answer the phone, and it's Officer Rogers, FBI. I'm like, hold on, I'll be right back. Tell my professor that I'll be back in a minute, and a kid on the app threatened to blow up a school in Alabama. A high schooler was using Yik Yak to communicate on his high school, and he was like, I'm going to blow up X high school. Because high schoolers didn't understand the power of anonymity at the time. Or they still don't. They probably won't ever will. It turns out the FBI and every authority will take that seriously if you say you're going to blow something up. So they contacted the founders, and I was one of the guys, and they had my phone number, and they were like, we need to find out who this person is. And so I basically pulled my laptop out, went to the hallway, looked in our database, and identified who this individual was. Everyone was truly anonymous, but we tracked locations to a specific post, or every post to an address to a user. And at that point, the same person posted 6 messages from the same address, and it turned out it was his home address. So we were like, we don't know who this guy is, but we have high confidence this is his address. Mm-hmm. FBI knocks on his door, boom, kid goes to jail. And it was kind of one of those life-shocking moments where like, wow, we built something that people care about. Yeah. It was in a bad way at the time, but people were using it.
What were the conversations like internally trying to balance the intention of building a really helpful and useful product with people misusing it, like in that example?
Yeah, so we didn't want the app to be used for that at all. We wanted it to be what it was built for, give everyone equal voice on college campuses. So what we did is we proactively hired a full-time team and spent a lot of development resources on building moderation tools to prevent this. So we hired a full-on team in the Philippines that actually monitored the app 24/7, all content to make sure that it was appropriate. We had health representatives within the U.S. Health representatives means per college, make sure there was a healthy community and not a violent community, to actively make sure that this was a good app and not a bad app. We bought a database of every single high school in the U.S. and blocked them from using our application. So if you opened a Yik Yak in a high school, you would say you're not an area where you can use this. We did as much as we possibly could to make it a safe environment. But sometimes when you build stuff, you don't expect it. We didn't expect to be used for that at that point, but reacted and handled it as much as we could.
Yeah, that's powerful. So that year, you were getting a lot of traction, and from my understanding, a lot of inbound investor activity. So what was the growth like internally as a team, and how was that fueled by venture capital?
So we started as 3 people that thought we knew how to code. Then it blew up and we hit scale and we didn't know. And it didn't work for like a month. And so we had to hire a CTO basically to build a back end to handle the scalable infrastructure. Was the first hire. Then we raised money, hired an outsourced team, eventually brought them in-house, and then scaled on the marketing side and built a full college growth strategy after that. So we started as basically a Southeast company, social network, raised money, grew kind of the East Coast, built out an engineering team, and then built a full-on marketing team to attack the entire country.
What year was this?
2014.
2014. So what was the venture capital process like when you're in school? Your other co-founder, was he in school at that point, or he was
at that point he had graduated.
Okay, so was he out hustling investors? Are you out hustling investors?
So at the beginning we were both raising money together. We'd have inbound investor interest. They'd fly us someplace, which was cool. Totally different than normally raising money, as I found out later in life. Yeah. It would go from there.
Yeah. Do you have any good stories or lessons learned just being a young kid going through that process, trying to navigate this complex world of...
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing, basically. I mean, we're 23, 24, 25, and we're getting handed up by people that want to give us millions of dollars. We want to build products, but we don't know how to run a business. We surround ourselves with advisors that helped us make smart decisions. Yeah. That was really helpful going forward and kind of educated on what was smart and what wasn't. Yeah,
do you remember just any specific feedback any of the advisors gave that helped kind of shift your thinking into making an actual business out of it?
Mainly on the legal terms.
Yeah.
Still, it's all comes down to legal, and one line could make or break your business.
Okay. So how much money, or what were the rounds at?
So we initially raised a seed note, very small, through Atlanta Tech Village.
Yep.
Basically, we won a scholarship to get a desk there, and that was the first round.
It's a big one. It's a big win.
And then it was an actual small seed note. Then we raised 1 million or 1.5 million. Then we raised 10 million, and then we raised 62 million, totaling $73 million within a year.
Do you remember what the growth trajectory looked like for usage of the app during that time period?
Yeah, so we started, we hit 1 million users before we raised 10 million. Then in that summer, growth kind of slowed down because college kids weren't using the app anymore because they were at home, which when we realized we needed a new feature, which we called Spring Break, which allows you to remote into your college from a distance. And then when we went back to school, everything really took off and our marketing plans worked. Mm-hmm. And then we quickly raised the $62 million round right after that.
And at that time, you said it was 2014, 15?
So this would have been 2015 with the $62 million round. Yeah.
Okay, and what are the investors looking for at that point? Are they looking for a business model? Are they just looking for usage growth?
User growth with future business model.
Okay, and what were you pitching for the business model at the time?
Pseudo-anonymous data.
Okay.
So when you have anonymous data paired with actual data, it's what the user truly believes is what they say. So if I said, I'm going to go buy this car today, but on Facebook I'm saying something else, what you're saying anonymous is what you actually truly believe. Yeah. And when you pair that data set with something else, that's when it becomes truly valuable.
Okay. So you're sitting in Charleston?
Yeah, still live in Charleston, live somewhere downtown.
Yeah, and your company just raises a boatload of money. What are you thinking in terms of staying in school versus...
Yeah, so I left right after the $62 million round. I had a choice to make whether if I wanted to stay in college or basically move back to Atlanta and keep running this thing full time. What Yik Yak opened up for me were doors, people I could talk to that I couldn't otherwise talk to. What it did have behind it was a bad reputation of an anonymous cyberbullying app, which it was to some extent, but we tried to prevent as much as we could. And I saw this opportunity to where I could leave, start another company, doors open that weren't previously, and I could stay in college. And I had to stay in college because I promised my mom and dad I'd graduate. So those were the decisions behind it.
Yeah. So when you decided to leave, for those that don't know, can you just give the quick Cliff Notes version of how that company ended?
Yik Yak?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up selling to Square last April for a certain amount of money. We were still, I think, 20 people at the time, and now Yik Yak no longer exists.
Yeah, but one of the trends that was happening at that point, right, was there were some other competitors that came to market, and it seemed like everyone that was in this anonymous space got some level of popularity, and then at some point it just kind of, the popularity dropped more or less.
Yeah, so I mean, there was other competitors before Yik Yak. We overtook them. They had a different go-to-market strategy than us. They were focused on attacking office spaces as opposed to a younger user demographic, where we were focused on college kids market, which have the ability to attract audience groups up and down in the cycle. And what I mean by that is a college kid can influence their parents and younger siblings, where if I went after the office space and my mom tells me to download an application, I'm not going to do it. If I tell my mom I'm using this application, she's going to check it out because she wants to know what I'm doing, as well as my younger sister that's in high school. We influence the younger demographic and the older when you're in college. If you go after the older demographic, you can't influence below. To where our competitors in the space, they were only focused on the top, not the bottom half. And I think that's one of the reasons why we overtook them, and we beat them before we ended up selling.
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret, right? The sale wasn't massive.
No, I mean, it was basically a fire sale. We never reached our $400 million valuation that we raised at. Sequoia took their money out that we sold. That was basically it.
Yeah. Looking back, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you or the team might have done differently to change the outcome?
Innovate on the engineering side faster.
Yeah.
I mean, we were never the strongest engineers there. We were more marketers building a product. But if we could have built things quicker, may have had a different outcome. To where,
Yeah, I hear you. So, what year are you in college now?
I graduated.
Back to College of Charleston.
2.9.
Yeah. And
may have been 2.8.
What was the plan? You just had this crazy roller coaster experience that you were very involved in, and then you kind of did a different direction. But what were you thinking of doing? What was the plan?
Yeah, so
that solid 2.9.
After Yik Yak, started another company with a bad business model. We built a company that was built on top of the record label industry, to where we wanted to build a model that where you could listen to music with everyone in real time.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to do a deal with the record labels. We had good relationships with Yik Yak. We had the founder of Tinder was our advisor, investor. We had the Spotify's lawyer as our lawyer. So we had a great team together, and we got our term sheets from the record labels, and they were basically unreasonable. It was 65% of gross revenue, 15% non-dilutable equity, and $3 million upfront royalty payment. And if you're in the startup world, you can't run a business on that. And basically shut down once we got our final term sheet. So it was kind of a nice learning experience, to where you learn that you can't build something if you're dependent on someone else. Too ingrained. To if one decision by that business impacts your entire business value.
Yeah. So at this point, are you burnt out of startups and the roller coaster rides of the high and the low lows, or are you still thinking of getting back out there and building another company?
So at this point, a dude that denied me for a job like 10 times decides he's. My mic went out. Oh well. Decided that he wanted to offer me a job and be like, "Hey, do you want to help build this company?" And I said, "Let me think about it." Met with the team. It was a really good engineering team, and was one of the one things I hadn't worked with was the strongest engineering team I'd ever been a part of. And one of the things I learned at Yik Yak was engineering teams run a business. They're the ones that are building everything. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't want you to code. You suck at coding. Build a consumer app and build a user base." And that's what I did, and that's what I joined.
All right, you take this. We want to hear you, not me. I like that. Can we just say who it is?
No.
No, fine. How did he find you? How did he know that you were the right person to bring on to the team?
He had heard of Yik Yak probably, and he was trying to build a consumer app.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So what was your framework for making a decision to join that company, or to maybe go start something on your own?
I wanted to be with a stronger engineering team.
Yeah.
And be with a structured environment, and felt like I could learn from people as opposed to crafting the way.
Okay. And what was your role when you joined?
So I joined as CMO. Previously, I'd always been a technical guy, CTO, and this was a total transition from CTO to CMO, to where I am a CMO because I know how to code and I know how to growth hack, write bots that monitor Twitter, monitor Instagram, and identify users and target them, to where I spend $1 where someone may spend $1,000 and have the same outcome.
Yeah. So what was the app was live when it was Stream, right?
Yeah,
so
the app's called Stream. Still exists.
Stream. So B2C model. How many users did it have when you joined?
Thousands.
Okay. And what did you do in the short term as CMO to grow that number, and where did that?
So grew it up to a couple 100,000 users plus that within the U.S. user base. Facebook is targeting college campuses and themed Twitter accounts, Snapchat, Instagram, all that modeled for they can influence younger people. Similar stuff to what we did at Yik Yak, just repeated it again. And we grew the app pretty well as a consumer live streaming application to where narcissistic people would live stream their lives to other users. Turns out that other people thought that was a good idea too, including Twitter and Facebook. Turns out they also have endless money and they can buy an ESPN ad on Monday Night Football and spend $1 million. We didn't have that luxury. But what we did have is we had a really strong engineering team that built incredible technology. All the other guys in the space were dependent on a third party called Wowza, which was basically the backbone for live. We built our Wowza in-house, which allowed us to serve a unique market, which was enterprise video delivery. So we pivoted from a consumer mobile application to an enterprise video application, to where we serve video delivery for media publishers, professional sport broadcasters, other mobile applications where they need live video or offline video incorporated into their product. And we were able to make that transition quickly, and that's what the core company does today.
What was it like internal being part of a team where you focused all your time, energy, B2C, you had really good success, these big competitors come and you need to shift the whole model? Was everyone immediately on board? Did that take time? What was that process like?
I think it was a gradual transition. I mean, we had a lot of users. We had more users than our competitors when they first launched. But what our competitors had that we didn't have was endless capital. So if someone wrote us a $100 million check, yeah, we would have competed in the consumer space. Yeah. But no one did that. And we had to make a smart decision as a business that what do we have that they don't have? We have better tech. We have better engineers. What are they using? What are our competitors using? A technology that is not as good as ours. Because everyone always said that we had lower latency, we had better video quality. So we made that smart decision to make that transition.
Yeah, and at that point, how much B2B experience did you have?
0.
What was going through your mind as you had to make that transition to be the CMO of a B2B company as opposed to a B2C?
I had to learn really fast. So I went from 100% consumer background to now I'm going after people that have largest audience on a B2C play and supporting them on B2B from a media publisher, mobile app standpoint. And how do I do that? I got to learn really quickly. So I attend a bunch of conferences that are focused around media publishers, developer conferences, basically people that would use our technology and just listen. I don't talk, I listen, and understand what they need. And I take it back, bring it back to our team and speak, and then we attack the market based off that, see what problems people are having and how do we solve them from a product standpoint.
Yeah, typically B2B sales are very outbound sales driven. In your example, you are a marketer trying to bring inbound activity. Do you remember what early wins you had where you started to see traffic come from the B2B side?
Yeah, so our biggest early win, B2B side, was definitely NASA. So,
heard of them?
I'd hope. So we powered NASA's live video stream for the 2017 solar eclipse. It was actually inbound through the College of Charleston, initially from the NASA Space Grant project, where they wanted to live stream the solar eclipse from 100,000 feet, basically the edge of space across the path of totality. They reached out to me, not knowing any idea what I did, other than I did apps, and they were like, hey, do you know any live streaming solution that could help us? It's like, oh, that's what I do. And went through the chain of command from local NASA to NASA Space Grant to DC NASA, to actually winning the government contracting there. And they used us and a couple other really big name competitors that didn't actually work for the eclipse, and we were the only ones that had 100% uptime, which was kind of cool and gave us really credibility in the enterprise space.
Yeah. So today, do you have a sales team?
No.
What? It's incredible. So what are the channels today that are working really well for B2B sales?
So we've got an excellent content marketer, and we have inbound.
Inbound. All right. I know at some point during your time as CMO, you transitioned to CEO. Can you talk about that transition, why it happened, and what your transition has been as the leader of the company now?
Yeah, so our CEO at the time, good entrepreneurial background, has his things does a lot basically, and I was traveling a lot at the time, and I was speaking on behalf of the CEO, and I wasn't the CEO, and it basically made my job easier to have the CEO title. So he asked me if I wanted to be CEO. I said yes, and I went from there. From a day-to-day operation standpoint, not too much changed.
I was going to say, how did you learn to be a CEO? What changed?
I had to read more legal documents.
Yeah.
basically do the not so fun things of running a business. Legal documents, paperwork.
Sure. Well, what you said a minute ago I think is really interesting, which is when you were learning B2B marketing, what you did was listen. And you found really smart people and you learned through others. When you're CEO, that's much more difficult. So you have just...
So the same process, you surround yourself with people who are smarter than yourselves and you listen. You listen to what they have to say and you learn and you adapt. When I first started out too, I listened to people on the internet, on internet forum, on how I could initially market. And I took what I thought was smart and what I didn't think was smart and adapted. Same thing from going to B2B sales, same thing with going to being a CEO. You take what people say, you listen, and you personally understand what you think, and you adapt and you react on those decisions.
Yeah. Do you remember if there was any story early on where you thought you were in over your head or you made a bad choice to become CEO, or you've just been tackling the problem?
I've probably been over my head way too many times to count. Nothing particular comes to my head, but recently, not so much. Back when I was in college and I almost failed 20 times, but then yes.
You seem someone that's very comfortable in the midst of like chaos and uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, if you're afraid to fail, you're going to lose every time. So you have to be prepared to have basically someone to gun to your head and be able to react intelligently.
Is that something that you've had to learn, or that has come pretty naturally to you?
I think that's instinct. I think it came from tennis, actually, to be honest. So tennis is a very unique sport where it's not a team sport, it's an individual sport. And in order to succeed, you have to be mentally tough and emotionally prepared to either win or lose. So if I'm on the court, I can't go call a teammate, I can't call a coach. I have to be in the head. If I'm going to win, if I self-destruct mentally, I'm going to lose. And I learned that mentality very young. I remember I broke my cell phone when I was 14 years old because I lost a tennis match being up 6-0, 5-0, and that was the transition point where it's like, if I'm afraid to lose, I'm going to lose. So since that point, my tennis career went from being 300 in the Southeast to 50 in the Southeast when I started not taking risks. And my entire life's been about taking risks and not being afraid.
I like it. So since CEO, what's like the highest high you've had? What's the biggest win?
So since being probably the Q, so the newest product we recently launched. So some of you guys in the audience may know, some may not. The Q Trivia, it's a live trivia game show on your phone. We've got a competitor in the US that's HQ Trivia, relatively popular.
How many people here know of HQ?
How many know of the Q?
How many people are playing the Q?
All right, there we go. So HQ initially launched basically Silicon Valley dime. It didn't even work. So they're powered on live video. And I reach out to them initially saying, oh, that's a Stream Enterprise customer, right? Live video, we can solve their problems. The dude doesn't respond to me. And I think, I have a consumer background. We've got a live video infrastructure that works in place. Let's compete in this space as opposed to just have them as a customer. So I programmed for the first time in 5 years, and with a couple of the teammates, and we built a competing app in 3 weeks.
What was that internal conversation like? Are you like this crazy CEO just like going rogue, or people are like rallying around this new direction? Or not new direction, but side hustle? It
depends on who you ask. I was probably crazy by some and probably smart by some. But our mobile team was ahead of the back-end team at the time, to where this was mainly a mobile application that we were building. And we had the back-end in place with the stream side. And so pulled our Android developer. I built the iPhone app and we launched it.
How quickly did you get that product to market?
3 weeks from first line of code to launch.
Wow, and what was that launch strategy?
PR campaign. So put it on the market, basically positioning as ourselves as HQ's competitor. We launched on both Android and iPhone. They were only on iPhone at the time. The guy from HQ is the Vine guy. So Yik Yak and Vine, it always had the consumer mentality. So from a PR perspective, I positioned it, Yik Yak guy takes on Vine guy, launches competitor. Blew up in the press, and we had our launch from there.
I'm just really impressed with your ability to spin the narrative into something relevant and current and to get out there. It's super, super impressive.
Yeah, you got to use it smart. I hadn't used my Yik Yak co-founder status in a long time. And you can only take so many shots every once in a while from a PR launch strategy. And I thought this was a time where it was relevant to use it, and it paid off and it worked.
So you launched that, it was January of this past?
Yeah, we launched it like December 6th.
Okay, so just take us through the first 90 days. That's where we are now.
So December 6th launched it, hit like 20,000 users within the first couple days, which was pretty cool in the mobile app space. Had a lot of inbound interest from a lot of different parties. Shout out to JMO, birthday boy, who raised his hand as our host.
That's it. I love that story. Can you just tell that story about how you found your first host?
Yeah, so what we built was a live trivia game show, and for a live trivia game show, you need a host. And we're in the office, and that's the one thing we don't have. And I asked, who wants to be a host? JMO was like, I can host. And that day we ran a show, and he's been our host ever since.
Literally though, it's like, who wants to be a host? JMO raises his hand, and then he's in front of 20,000 people.
And then
like
JMO's on the front page of Business Insider, Washington Post, living the dream.
You've heard all his successes. That was his biggest failure.
Yeah. I like it. So within that first month, you're getting some traction in the U.S. You're going head to head with HQ. What does the next 60 days look like?
Yeah, so we have a lot of inbound interest from different people that want to partner with us, or from a brand perspective. The format was very attractive to advertisers in other countries specifically. And we had a couple countries reach out to us basically, hey, I want to launch a game show in my specific country, because in other countries they don't care about the NFL, they care about cricket, they care about football. And we're like, all right, this is interesting. So guys fly in from India, they fly in from Europe, they fly in from all over and basically pitch, hey, we want to be your partner in another country. Mm-hmm. So we basically interviewed who we wanted to be partners in specific regions. We found strategic partners, and we recently launched in India last week. I just got back 2 days ago, and we launched the Indian queue over there.
How's that launch going?
Decent. We hit 250,000 users yesterday, and 50,000 people played the game live today concurrently within 7 days after launch.
No, that shit. Where do you think their India usage will be by the end of the year?
I bet they hit 100,000 by the end of next week, and they probably hit 1 million within 30 days.
Do you have any competitors in India?
We do right now. What we have the advantage of in India is we have a really good partner that has very good connections in the Bollywood space. To where here, we don't care about Bollywood. In India, they love Bollywood.
All about Bollywood. So how are you spending your time?
Right now, on an airplane.
Yeah, doing what?
Going to different countries, working on a global plan for the queue.
Okay, so you figure you'll focus more globally than domestically, or are you putting effort equally?
We have plans in both markets. We have media partners in the U.S. that we may execute with shortly. We have media partners globally we may execute with shortly. It's just identifying what decision we want to make. We have the ability to move really quickly because of our engineering team.
Yeah.
And it's just basically business decisions and what makes the most sense at the given point in time.
Okay. I want your no shit answer. So you've been through a bunch of different companies, some more successful than others. What does this feel like at this moment?
So this feels like the back in the day of Yik Yak when we raised $62 million from Sequoia.
So what does the future of the queue look like for, let's just say, this year?
We're going to probably raise a decent financing round and go global and beat HQ.
Fuck yeah. I had more questions, but let's just end on that and open it up for Q&A. I like that. All right, we got time for questions. Who's going to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Is your engineering team all located in one place, or are they distributed?
Yes, they're all located in Charleston, South Carolina, and one's a pizza delivery boy for Papa John's.
Can you do me a favor? Just repeat the questions when people say them. It's hard.
Oh yeah, our engineering team is currently all located in Charleston, South Carolina.
All right, right there.
What are you doing in the dark you want to take a picture of?
I don't know. Family photo.
I like it. All right. What else? What else? Don't be scared, guys. Guys got Will.
Who was your favorite professor at CFC?
Dr. Starr, hands down. Chris Starr, if anyone here's in college, make sure you take a class from him. He's basically the reason I went to college at Charleston. He did a better job recruiting me than the tennis coach.
I feel like a bit of the difficult task of the queue was a little big glossed over. Did you guys have to hire like a whole new, I guess, angle of talent to come up with content for that?
Yeah, so it was a funny story. So we hired a content marketer for Stream, basically to write our blog posts, manage our social media channels. She starts day one thinking she's going to write blog posts on video infrastructure and media companies all day. We launched the queue that day, and I'm like, hey Liz, you've got a new job description. You're going to write questions all the time. And she still does that, and she's a baller at it. So we have basically the script writing team of one. We have a video production team of basically us, and we've got a baller host. Anson's birthday, so buy him a drink.
Happy birthday.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this, but I do HQ all the time. Is it live stream or?
Yeah, so it's live stream twice a day, 5:30 and 8:30, broadcasted on Daniel Island, South Carolina. And then IQ, you guys can't play because it's locked to the Indian market, but if you have an Indian phone number, you can play.
All right.
So how big is your company now in total?
17 people.
And how do you create that startup, you've got the stereotypical startup environment where you can ride scooters around the office and there's a keg of beer all the time. Do you try to go for that? Are you a little unique during the tech space, or?
We definitely don't have scooters. We've got a very laid-back work environment to where we're all very talented, and it's more of a get your stuff done, and we don't babysit. We don't have a beer keg. We've got a coffee keg. Shout out to Barista Vending. Great job on the coffee. And yeah, but it's very laid-back startup environment. But no scooters. Yet.
What's the biggest mental struggle that you struggle with right now in the position that you're in?
Making smart decisions, knowing that people are dependent on the company's success, and if we don't act appropriately, it's not me personally at stake, but it's other people's families are at stake. And we've got to make smart decisions to support our employees, not just us.
Do you ever see yourself staying in Charleston or moving the company to Silicon Valley or something?
No, I'm Charleston till I die.
Yeah.
I'm here 2 nights a week, but.
Noah.
What's the biggest change you've seen in social media? How we've used it back in 2009, 10, 11, 12 to now?
I could talk about this for 50 minutes. It's the way people are using the platforms and the way younger demographics are moving from platform to platform. Everyone's sleeping on Snapchat, but Snapchat's got the most engaged younger user demographic of any audience. Snapchat hasn't covered or reached the older demographic of people in this room, but if you're marketers, you're going on Snapchat if you know what you're doing. Twitter used to be that place. Facebook, I don't think will ever be that place. Instagram and Snapchat right now are the 2 biggest mediums to attract users that are aggressive in the younger user demo. I don't think they're going to lose them for a long time, but people are hopping from point A to point B. They've been very loyal to those user bases for a long time.
All right, 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap. In the back.
Where have you seen the most underpriced marketing events so far?
I don't know from an event standpoint. Are you saying underpriced marketing event from buying marketing space or attending an event, a conference?
From buying marketing.
Snapchat, hands down. People aren't utilizing it, so that's why it's so cheap.
All right, 1 more question. Right there.
So, as a successful iPhone app developer, what is the best strategy for protecting your intellectual property so that others aren't copying or stealing code?
You're asking the guy that got 2 cease and desists and didn't file a patent. Patent it? I'm probably not the best source of information there.
Is that what companies?
I mean, people are always going to copy something. It's basically, can you defend it from a legal standpoint? It's going to come down to legal and money at that standpoint and protecting ideas. Software ideas are difficult to protect. People always copy it. And it comes down to if it's a proprietary technology or if it's a proprietary idea. I'd like to give better advice there, but it's not my best knowledge base.
What time is the next game?
8:30.
8:30. All right. Everyone get out your phone and download the Q. Let's get you some more users.
Yeah.
All right, let's give Will a round of applause. Woo.